in from, or watching us from, or listening to us from. This is your 10-minute plug-in from MBN, and I'm your host for today, Ambassador Joyce Murigi, and I'm broadcasting from Nairobi, Kenya. This is the day that the Lord has made, and we shall rejoice and be glad in it. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you. We continue with our discussion on forgiveness. So we talked about forgiveness. We laid a foundation about forgiveness, and we also talked about the benefits of forgiveness. And today I say that we are going to address ourselves on the subject of, what do we do when we find ourselves on the offensive, when we are the ones who have offended? What are we supposed to do? Previously, in the last two sessions, we talked about finding grace to forgive the wrongdoers, the ones who have wronged us. But we often, more often than not, find ourselves on the offensive, offending side, causing harm, causing pain. So what are we supposed to do when we find ourselves in such a scenario? And I posed a few questions. So I start. What do we do when we find ourselves on the offensive side? When we have offended, or we have caused harm, or we have hurt, we have caused pain, we have transgressed, we have caused discomfort on others, we have annoyed someone, or even caused anger, or upset someone, or even a group. What are we supposed to do? We offend with words. Or I would want us to pose that question. How do we offend? So we offend with words, we offend with actions, we offend with omissions, we offend with habits, and the list goes on. Sometimes in arguments, and we say things that are offensive, even when we are holding a simple discussion. It can take a different turn, and we find ourselves offending the people we are discussing things with, or even talking, with each other. There are times the offended will show resentment. When I have offended somebody, him or she might show resentment. He or she might show that he is angry or uncomfortable, but the other times, I might not even know, or we might not even know if we have offended anyone or not, because not every time that we do things or we act in ways to offend anyone. So sometimes we offend unintentionally, and other times we offend intentionally, and which is a very sad state of affairs. But whatever it is, whatever situation it is, the result is one, that we have offended somebody. The one on the receiving end is hurt. And this could be your partner, a spouse, a child, a sibling, a parent, friend, colleague, a business partner or associate, and the list goes on. When we offend, what happens? When we offend, intentionally especially, a gap is created between us and the ones we have offended. We lose some connection. The gap created depends on the level of hurt or pain. When we offend, we lose other things. We lose trust from the person that we have offended. We also lose our peace, and we violate the other person's peace. A number of things also get affected. Love between us gets affected. And relationships are based on love, so a relationship also gets affected. Communication between ourselves gets affected. So this, in the end, affects relationships and affects partnerships, businesses, families, and you can have your own list. And there is obviously some sort of detachment. But how do we often go about it? What is the default setting in us? Sometimes is okay, and I don't care attitude. Other times we ignore, but deep down in ourselves, we know that we are hurting and we are getting destroyed. There are two forces in play here. There is the flesh and there is a spirit. The flesh tells us, hold up, deny, justify, defend yourself, or ignore, or even argue about it. The Spirit tells us to seek forgiveness. It is only forgiveness that will bring reconciliation, that will bring restoration of the things that I have said get lost. The flesh is under the influence of the evil one. That's another force because he comes to us with pride. And while we are arguing, while we are denying, while we are defending ourselves, even when we know that we are on the wrong, while we are justifying, is because we have let pride take control of us. Pride is cursed, it is evil. If you let pride control you, then this will destroy you. On the other hand, we have another force, the spirit. And the spirit is under the influence of God because the evil one will not get to your spirit. The spirit tells us to seek forgiveness. He shows us the benefit of asking for forgiveness. But to ask for forgiveness requires humility. So we must humble ourselves when we wrong others and ask for forgiveness. First Peter and chapter 5, verses 5 to 6 says, God resists the proud, but gives grace to the humble. Therefore, we need to humble ourselves under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt us in due time. So when we humble ourselves and we seek forgiveness, then God gives us grace and he exalts us in due time. James chapter 4 and verse 7 says, resist the devil, humble yourself, and the devil shall flee from you, because he's the one who tells us or who brings pride, and therefore pride overcomes humility. So when we resist the devil, he flees from us and we get humility. Proverbs chapter 3 and verse 4 says, God has no use for conceited people, but gives favor to the humble. So humility is blessed, pride is cursed. So when we humble ourselves, we operate under grace. We operate under, in the dispensation of grace. The favor of God is upon us, as the scriptures have gone. And we are operating under grace. And where grace is, then God's presence is there. We also find favor, and grace and favor, when they are together, that is a win. It is not a weakness to ask for forgiveness, but rather it is a win. And let me quickly say or talk about the fruits of grace, because we have seen that when we humble ourselves and ask for forgiveness, then we operate under grace. So what are we aiming to achieve when we are operating in a season of grace or in that dispensation of grace? Grace of God saves us. Grace justifies us. Grace sanctifies us. God does not let us struggle by ourselves. The grace of God is enough, is sufficient, and he gives us grace after grace. Grace defends us. Grace gives us victory. Grace teaches us godliness. Grace helps us to find our place with God. Grace empowers us, and grace enables us to reign. I hope you have been blessed, because I have been blessed. And let us seek humility so that we can be led to a position of asking for forgiveness, because even asked to God, we must ask for forgiveness so that we can be forgiven of our sins. Because if we do not choose humility, if we choose pride, then we are going to destroy ourselves. We are going to be destroyed because we are going to be a workshop of the devil. He likes to work in areas or in places where he can have control, and pride is one of them, that he catches our control through pride. So I will see you at the top where the eagles fly, and I leave you with a queen's salute. Bye bye, and I love you.